Are we live?
That is correct. We are now live.
We are live.
Okay. Good. I will call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Sierra Madre for May 7th, 2020. Do we have roll call?
Chair Hutt,
Here.
Vice Chair Dennison,
Here.
Commissioners Catalano,
Here.
Desai, Ellis,
Here.
Hefner, and Spears.
Present.
Okay. We have a quorum. We can move forward. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So move.
And can you repeat that? Who made the motion? Was that Bob?
I moved also.
Okay. Which one he wants to choose to be second?
I'm not hearing audio.
I'll go second.
Okay. We got Joe making a motion and Bob second.
Anybody hear
All in
me?
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. We can hear you, Vincent.
Okay, I'm putting up my volume again because I couldn't hear anybody. So who made the motion?
Joe made the motion and Bob seconded. Okay, next we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Are there any comments or corrections for the minutes from the April 2nd meeting?
I have one very minor one.
Okay,
That is starting in line 120 and finishing in line 129, that paragraph. An understandable thing, but where it says haunch, it should be haunched in the past tense with just an ED on the end of it. That would be the technical term. Very simple.
That change?
Just scan through it. There's at least twice in there where the word haunch is used, and it should be haunched, ED.
okay, any other corrections? I will entertain a motion with those corrections.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. That was moved by Joe and seconded by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, any opposed or abstaining? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next, we'll move on to community input. I don't know if we have community available, but I know that our council liaison is here. Don, would you like to address the commission?
Yes, I'm back and I'm going to try to attend as many meetings as I can now. I just think I'm not sure that worked that well, just having the quarterly liaison meetings. So I still think we should do that. But I do want to just stay a little closer to what you guys are doing here. So I'm here and I'll probably drop off my video so you don't have to watch me go fix dinner here, but I'll be listening.
Okay, great, thank you. I guess that's it for community input then. And when we have items that people emailed in or mailed in, we'll note those for the planning, for the particular public hearings. So with that, we'll move on to the public hearings. And first part of that is disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. I will disclose that I went to the Nathaniel Terrace site and viewed it. I did not go to the other one on Oak Crest because it's within 500 feet of my house, and I will be recusing for that hearing.
I went to the Oak Crest location. I did not go to the Nathaniel Terrace. It's within 500 feet of my residence, and I will be recusing myself.
I've been to the Nathaniel Terrace property previously. I did not go to the Oak Crest because on Tuesday I was busy with the students finishing up my semester at Cal Poly. Couldn't make it.
I went to both sites.
I did not go to Nathaniel Terrace. I've been there previously, and I did not make it to the Oak Drive property.
Okay, I went to the Nathaniel Terrace before, previously, and I went to Oak Crest on Tuesday.
Okay, great. Let's move on to then Planning Commission hearing number 1, which is Hillside Development Permit 1402 and Conditional Use Permit 1408. We have a staff presentation.
Staff presentation by Claire Lynn, its manager for the project.
Good evening, Mayor, Chair, and Commissioners. I'll be sharing my screen right now. So the Planning Commission this evening will be reviewing the Hillside Development Permit and the Conditional Use Permit that was continued from the January 16th meeting for the property located at 9 Nathaniel Terrace, also known as Lot 5. The presentation will be delivered into 2 parts. I'll go over the proposed changes, and the architect, Mr. Garcia, will go over in detail with the design and also a side-by-side comparison. So to recap, the property is located at the northwest side of the Stonegate development. It is a 23,562 square foot vacant lot.
Claire,
Yes.
Peggy, I just wondered, do you have your video muted or your audio muted? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback and you keep popping up as the presenter.
I cannot mute my audio.
No, Peggy Dallas.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do I have what?
I think you have can you mute your audio? There you go. Thank you. You can continue, Claire.
Okay. So the applicant's request is to allow the construction of a new 4,502 square foot single family residence, including an attached 2-car garage on the existing flat pad. Pursuant to the municipal code, construction of a single family dwelling in the hillside management zone requires approval of a hillside development permit. And a conditional use permit is required to ensure that the development contrasts with the design, contrasts with the McComber Cabin, Carter Barn, and the Willis Estate. Sorry about that. So the applicant took Commission's recommendation and did a further study on the design and has returned with revised plans and elevation, floor plans, and renderings that address Commission's concern. So first, applicant has changed out the layout and the footprint. They have relocated the courtyard to the south that faces the views, compacted the building footprints to eliminate the portico share, enlarge the rear yard, and increase the south side yard setback. And also for the second story massing, The architect moved the massing towards the northeast corner, and the south-facing building elevation is condensed by eliminating the lower wing wall and a bedroom on the second floor. The bulkhead mass are significantly reduced at the southwest corner. A library and a deck above is set back 8 feet from the front wall. The architect also has revised the exterior finishes on the south elevation, and instead of the stucco, they changed it to fire retardant treated wood panel and introduced a Maltese balcony on the north elevation to soften the appearance. And also wood window shutters are added to balance the verticality of the window placement. The architect also took commission's comments and explored the option to lower the pad or to explore the option to have a subterranean garage. And they were able to lower the pad by 3 feet. Here is the project information. Remain unchanged from last time. Setbacks are increased slightly, but it is a fully code-compliant project. Here is the conceptual site plan. You can see it from the orange dotted line. That is the previous footprint with the porte cochere, and now the footprint is much condensed and compact. This is the conceptual landscape plan. Noted that the pavement on the north has been eliminated. The courtyard has been moved to the south. This is just a motor court, and the condensed footprint allows a larger rear yard to have a sizable rear yard at the back. And also the courtyard at the south will be connected with the rear yard and providing multiple seating areas that faces the view. Here is the proposed floor plan. And previously there is a master suite on the first floor, and it has been eliminated and replaced by a library. And on the second floor, it's stretched from the east to west, and it has 3 bedroom and 3 bath on the second floor. Here is the revised roof plan, has significantly changed, and it's simplified to a more uniform hip roof, and it has eliminated the roof well, the flat area that the previous design had. Here are the sections cut throughout the mortar core on the top, and a longitudinal section cutting from east to west, where this is the front arcade, the loggia, and the foyer, all the way to the rear family room. Additional sections here are a north-south section cutting through the garage and the courtyard, the south-facing courtyard. And this is the section that's cutting through the family room and the bedroom behind the garage. Here are the color elevations showing the reduced mass and the shortened wing wall at the southwest side. The building mass is reduced at that corner, and the house still exhibit the characteristic of the Italian Renaissance Revival style. They have kept the low-pitched clay barrel tiles, arch openings, casement windows. And at the south elevation, they have introduced the wood paneling instead of the stucco for the library for that southwest corner. And this is the east elevation on the top, where they have the painted blue doors and the wrought iron railing. And the north elevation is where you see the mortar court with the Maltese balcony. And now the trash enclosure is hiding behind the garage on the side. Here are the colors and material that will be used for the project. And it's primarily earth tone with bright color selected with a warm trim. The exterior walls are medium beige and the cast stone resembles the sandstone. The windows and panels are painted with dark brown color, and the window frames are finished with the blue, the Sierra Pacific slate blue color. Here is the photo montage of the proposed project viewing from Nathaniel Terrace, looking northeast. And this is a photo montage from Nathaniel Terrace, looking straight east onto the property. Hillside development permit findings has to be made in order to approve the project. Here are the summaries of the findings: that the proposed project is consistent with general plan for single family use, and it meets all zoning regulations as to floor area, height, setbacks, and parking requirement. The new construction is on an existing flat building pad, and the house does not impact the ridgeline views. And for the landscape plan, it will incorporate native hillside vegetation, and majority of the landscape will be preserved. Building material are using earth tone color palette, and it will comply with water efficient landscape plan. Conditional use permit findings has to be made as well. And here are the summaries: that the proposed project is differentiated from the existing historic structure. The single family use is consistent with the single family development in the vicinity, and the project meets all requirements of the zoning code and the intent use on the general plan. Here's the summary: that the project is compliant with Stonegate design guideline, that this is a custom architectural design that responds to the site. The mass and bulk are reduced, and with variations and architectural projections and balconies. Variety of window sizes and configurations will enhance the visual interest, and the material that been selected are durable and low maintenance. The alternative before Planning Commission this evening is to approve the application pursuant to Resolution 1913, approve the application with modification, or deny the application identifying the findings that the Commission feels cannot be made and the basis for rejecting those findings, or continue the project and provide staff and applicant with further direction. Staff is recommending that Planning Commission take the following action and approve the application for Hillside Development Permit 1402 and Conditional Use Permit 1408, subject to the conditions of approval. That concludes my first part of presentation, and give me a minute and I'll load up the the second. Everardo, can you hear me?
Hello. Hi, Claire.
Were you able to see the screen?
I can see the screen. Thank you. And I guess I'll just mention when we need to change slides. Would that be the best way?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, good evening, Chair Hutt and commissioners. It's great everyone's doing well during this crazy time. We're happy to be here to present our revisions to our project here on Lot 5. From our last meeting, we did take into consideration recommendations by the commissioners and took another look at the project and see how we can address some of those concerns. Next. One of the first things we did do was to reduce the size of the motor court. And that was the comment before, and it was a good comment in terms of our motor court being too large and not really usable for the people inside the house. It became more of a item for cars. So we did take a look at that. We also did consider one of the comments in which was to put the garage at the basement. We spoke and reviewed it with the client. Unfortunately, the client decided not to go in that direction just because of cost. They were concerned about creating a basement and everything related to that. So what we did was we eliminated the portico share that we had, reduced the size of the motor court, and we were able to push the garage forward, still allowing for a small motor court and allowing the garage to be screened from the Nathaniel Terrace. By doing that, it allowed us to reduce the size of and footprint of the house and allow the house to wrap around the garage. As you can see, the red outline is the original footprint. And what you see is smaller footprint. Their areas were, especially on the south west corner, we were able to really eliminate some of the mass there. We did introduce a courtyard onto the south side, which allows that mass to be broken up as well. And it allows a usable courtyard that opens up to a dining and family room, and then takes advantage of the great view this house will have. Also on the northeast corner, we were able to, as we pushed the garage and we were able to locate a bedroom behind it, we still were able to reduce the footprint of the house and allow for a much better, more usable rear yard in the back. In doing so, again, our south exposure has been reduced in massing. The southwest corner is smaller, and we'll see in the next slide, the mass over the two elements that are closest to the south have been reduced. Here you can see that we did kind of break apart the elevation and plan on the south side. So that courtyard really helps to create a beautiful, workable, livable space, and then allows the mass to break on both sides. So we'll see once we get to the elevations that it really helps that south elevation. Here you can see, which I think what really helps is that we were able to get one-story elements on the south side over the family room and over the library, which will read nicely from the south elevation, which is the most visible. You'll see lower forms, and the second-story mass has been pushed further back, so it won't read as close to the edge and won't be perceived as quickly as it was before. Here you can see how the second floor, we were able to thin it, make it a little longer, but thin it down. that really helped with our roof plan. I think you'll be happy to note that we did get rid of our roof well. So now the roof is a nice, clean, simple roof, which I think works really nicely. And I think we can go to the next slide. Here we go. The roof became much simpler. You'll see there's on the south side, the smaller roof forms, lower roof forms, and then a much cleaner, complete roof over the main house without any roof wells. We can go to the next slide. Here, what we wanted to show is how we had reduced the massing in terms of the elevation. You'll see with the red outline again, how the house really, in essence, was pushed away from the south property line. We eliminated the wing wall on the front elevation. We were able to reduce the mass that faces the street. And also in doing so, was able to push the second floor further away from that edge. Also, let's see, we have another slide coming up. It's a much smaller elevation face than we had before. Before it was a much more linear, more planar elevation. Now there's a little bit more movement. We have the main elevation with the entry and the entry into the motor court. And then behind it, we did push back the library about 8 feet. So it doesn't read as part of the front elevation. So it minimizes its impact. We can go to the next slide. Here is really emphasizes the fact that we did break the plane. It emphasizes the strong flat elevation we had before, which is very much a part of the style, but we were able to turn it towards the north side, allow the library to read as a smaller element. And we also treated it differently. We treated it in the wood cladding to help break up the stucco mass that would be perceived from the south. So it helps to break up that wall, the long wall. Let's say we can go to the next. Here we see on the top one, the revised south elevation. And actually, I think it worked out really well. I feel this is a much better elevation. We were able to, first of all, the roof deck, we were able to open it up with a railing. And again, the treatment of the library mass, we're treating it as a special little piece in a wood paneled format. And that helps break it away from the main building. I think also the massing worked out where we were able to break the planes. We have a hip form and then a long linear roof form as opposed to what we had before, which was just a very linear roof. We were able to introduce more windows to take advantage of the views with a little bit more detail of shutters and loggia. And here also the family room, we reduced the height of it. Before it used to be a little taller than the normal roof. We were able to bring it down and introduce a nice roof form, which I think reads well from this side. We can go to the next elevation. Here, I think the top elevation shows how we were able to push the elevation back. So it is, the south elevation is back, you can see its profile. And the middle of the house is where the two-story mass has been concentrated. Also, I think overall the composition worked out much better. I think we have a nice lower roof forms over the family and morning and breakfast. And then the other mass we're able to articulate a little bit better with balconies and shutters, creating, I think, a much more complete elevation than we had before, especially since the garage faced the rear. We didn't have that many opportunities to introduce windows. So I think that really worked out well. And then we can go to the next one. We can see the north elevation that shows the motor court and then the low roof forms as well. So Even on this side, the second story massing has been broken down and been stepped with the lower roof forms as opposed to the previous design. And next elevation. I think we can probably skip this one. And I think you've seen this, it just shows how our plan has changed. We can go to the next and one more, I think. Here we can see the elevations really showing how we were able to break that plane of the house so it doesn't feel as long and as flat as it was before. We were able to push that library back, and having that library in a different material, it does tend to help recede a little bit more and separate it from the overall mass of the house. You can see that as well on the south elevation, which I think will be a much more pleasant elevation seen from the south side, but also it is pushed back a little more than it was before, so it won't be as easily seen, especially on the south west corner. And if we can go to the next slide, these just show the colored elevations of the project, the north and east elevation. And I think we have one more. Then these are the photo montage showing what the houses would look on site. And I think the lower one starts to show how we were able to reduce the mass at that corner. One of the comments we had received was that the south west corner was very prominent, and we had a lot of mass of the building in that corner. So we were able to push that back, cut down one of the wing walls, and treat that library slightly different to help minimize its impact on the elevation. And I think those are kind of the key things we addressed. I think overall, we feel much happier with how the building is sitting on the site, and I'm hoping you like it as well. I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay, do we have questions for staff or the applicant?
I have a question for Everardo. The presentation said that the pad elevation was dropped 3 feet.
Yes, and that was due to the fact that when it was originally graded, it was graded at the incorrect height.
Okay, so did the whole pad where the house sits drop the 3 feet, or is it just the driveway, or what happened?
The whole pad would be dropping.
Okay, so I noticed in that side by side where you showed the front elevation and then the outline in red of the previous profile, it looks like the new design, the mass is actually like a foot taller, the roof. So would the whole thing have dropped? Shouldn't it be shorter in vertical height than the previous design?
Well, actually, the dropping of the pad that we did on the previous design as well. So what had happened is when they originally graded the lot, they graded it incorrectly. So in our original submittal and on this one, we're showing it at its original, its correct pad elevation, which means that they would have to grade it down about 3 feet.
Okay, so you didn't raise the plate height on the ground floor or anything?
No, we kept it the same.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes. John.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, one of the I think it was back in the findings, there was mention of sustainable planting. Is that correct? I'd like to know what is it? Who reviewed it? Could maybe Everardo could just walk us through. It's a subject area I'm not really familiar with. I'd like to hear about it.
In terms of the landscape planting?
Yeah.
Honestly, I wish our landscape architect was here. I know that they followed the recommendations for the landscape.
That were in the
What-
original deal.
On what type of plantings they should use in terms of the site. I know Sierra Madre has specific recommendations and requirements,
And those were followed.
and those were followed.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Any other questions, Joe?
No, I'm good. I just would like to note that I definitely, looking at how steep that driveway is, I definitely support the idea of there having kept some motor court so that every guest who pulls in there isn't parking on a very, very steep angle, but you know, it allows some graciousness in terms of in terms of finding some relatively level area outside the garage to park in. I'm glad they kept that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that segues into a question I have, which is I'm very appreciative of the porte cochere coming out. But I noticed that we left a screening wall in front of the motor court, and I was wondering if you could explain that, because it still seems to me to present a lot of massing that's not really behind it.
Well, actually, we did do some studies with and without the wall. But we saw that as we reduced the massing on the south side of facing the south side, the house was becoming very narrow. And in order to help give the house a little bit more presence and be more fitting with the style, we ended up reintroducing the wing wall on the left-hand side or the north side to help extend the elevation, or else it felt very narrow and tall. And we felt this also helped to give us a little more horizontality to help with the appearance of the height.
I would like, if I could butt in, I would like to support your having done that, and for a different reason, and that is for a house of this character, of this nature, the idea of a semi-enclosure that you are in between the motor court and the loggia next to it, I think is a very gracious design element that is, let's say, well deserved or very appropriate for this. And it's over on the side where we didn't have much of an issue about massing anyway. So let's not put this guy on too much of a diet here, all right?
Okay, any other questions for the applicant or staff?
I have one more. I just noticed a discrepancy in the material board versus the colored elevations. Are the windows like a olive green or are they blue? Because on the renderings, they look like a greeny tone, which I think's nicer actually, or more fitting with the earth tone. But
I think the color board is accurate.
blue?
It is blue, and it's just the results of the rendering where the color is a little off. I mean, if it's, I think blues and greens are definitely typical of this style. So I mean, we're a little open to the color. Green is used a lot, and we thought blue was a nice variant.
If you see Mediterranean houses like this, sometimes very, very saturated turquoise blues are used. So having to make this nothing but a collection of earth tones is it's not even necessary stylistically here. In fact, I wish they were brighter, but I guess that Sierra Pacific isn't going
To venture that much
it
into.
doesn't make that color.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we will, I guess we don't have any public comment, right? That's not something we're able to do, and we didn't receive any letters or emails on this project.
I would move that we
Not
approve as presented.
Okay, then let's move on to deliberations. Joe, it seems like you're ready to start us off. Why don't you let us know your thoughts?
Yeah, well, in addition to what I said about the automobile parking before, Everado's a good designer. He's really jumped through some hoops on this. I feel like he's very, very competently handled everything that we talked about last time, and I'm ready to go ahead and move to approve it as presented.
Okay, who would like to go next?
I can go. I think overall this is a huge improvement from the prior design. I think it's very clear. You can see how the mast steps sort of northeast, marching sort of the center of the site. I think flipping that courtyard space to the south and then rearranging the spaces there with the sort of the alfresco dining scenario, I think that's really nice. I think that's going to work really well. And so I think your plan is working really well. I studied that for quite a bit to see all the pieces where they moved, and I think you did a remarkable job sort of compacting it, but also stretching the second floor out. So I think that's all working really well. I don't have real heartburn with the porte cochere wing wall. I think what Joe and Everardo sort of said, I think it does help that frontal elevation not feel so squat, because it is kind of a 2-story stack right there where the front door is. So it's kind of nice, at least on one side, where that wall sort of does some work in stretching visually that facade, so it doesn't feel so vertical, but it kind of balances with the horizontal. So I think that I would not want to see that go. I thought, my eyes kind of lit up when I read that the pad dropped 3 feet. Obviously that was the case in the previous design. So I thought there was an opportunity to kind of push the house down a little bit. And I also noticed on your sections, which I hadn't previously noted, that your first floor plate height's 10 feet. So you've got a really airy first floor. It is what it is. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but it just, that it would have kind of been the cherry on top if we could have pushed it down a little bit. So I thought, and that's kind of where we were going with that subterranean base parking structure, where it would have at least not made it feel like it's up on a pedestal, the house. But I think the design's great. I like the darker elements. I have one nitpicky concern, and I was looking on the renderings to see if there are any planted trees around that south element. And that little element, the box, the library, it's wood, right? Is it clad in wood, or is it going to be a cement siding?
It's a cementitious.
Okay.
Just for durability.
Painted brown, right?
Painted brown, and maybe have a little texture.
Okay, that thing is gonna bake like no one's business, like that. I mean, it's just gonna be a hot box. You might as well put a sauna in there.
There is some planting. I think there's a tree located adjacent to the corner of the library.
I hope so, because I didn't see it in any of the renderings. You have some low planting around the base, but you need something that's the corner isn't going to really help you, that southwest corner. I mean, yeah, it'll block sort of the western sun, but you need something outboard, and I know you don't want to block the views as well, so it's kind of a balancing act. But it'd be nice if something you were smart in picking something that would grow up, so it created a larger canopy, but the base was clear. Does that make sense? of the tree. Just, I think you need to give that some thought, because I think from a maintenance standpoint, and just from a comfort standpoint, that thing is gonna get stinking hot.
No, and we'll definitely talk to the landscape architect. We're open to that. I must say that even that small little tree that's called out and planned, we didn't show it on the rendering to show a little bit more of the building, but
Okay.
It's definitely what we're open to that.
Okay, that's a minor comment. On the green versus blue, again, minor. I liked the renderings of the color elevations with the green, the sage green kind of tone. I just think I mean, I get like stylistically, like the brighter pop colors for these doors, windows is prevalent or part of that style, but I don't know. The blue just seemed like it was going to jump off the page, and you have such a muted palette with that stucco, like that tan stucco. That sage color would be nice, I think, or complementary, especially with the brown box, the library box, and that sort of bay pop out on the north side. But it's not a deal breaker for me. So overall, I think you get an A+. I think you did a great job. This is vastly improved from the previous round. So kudos to you. And I can stand behind it and approve it and make the findings. So.
Yeah, if I can chime in one last thing, you know, when we were talking about the property just up the hill from that a while back, I had gone over to the old house across the way, the 1939 brown house. Nobody was home. Nobody answered the door, but I did go up to the house and look across to the site just above it, and they're way off in the distance. They're way off in the distance. So I don't think that that any more trying to put this on a diet is the least bit necessary here. It would have absolutely no impact from across the way where you really see these things.
Okay. Bob, thoughts?
Okay. Like Manish, I was very excited when I saw the 3-foot drop on the pad. I thought that was excellent. When the last time we looked at this project, we didn't have a lot of heartburn, but it did stick up a little, and so dropping it 3 feet, I think, is going to be very helpful. I'm very impressed by the reducing of the massing, especially by making the library a different color. I think that really works. It takes away from the giant stucco nature of the rest of the building. The south-facing yard is a big improvement, and I think the motor court has improved. And I also want to say that by moving the project on the pad, it also sets the house back from the neighboring lots, and it makes it a little better for the neighbors. So I think I applaud I applaud the applicant, because they've listened to some of our concerns and they've responded very well. And I think the second attempt has been made it an improvement on something that we weren't that unhappy with in the first place. But you did it. The continuing effort is paid off. So good job.
Okay. Thoughts, Bill? Bill, is your audio working?
Is that me?
Yeah.
I think so. Hello. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's like be careful what you wish for, like we had that time. They met all the architectural requirements. They mitigated that one wall in the corner that stuck up so high. But again, with these building pads, we're stuck with what we're stuck with. So they made improvements, they made the adjustments. We basically have the same design house, and I think they've done what we've asked them to do. I don't have any direct criticism. That porte cochere still sticks up but they took away the one part of the stuff on the most visible side, and they muted all the other color palettes. So as much as you can do with that kind of design with the building transplanted, I think they've met the requirements.
Okay, great. Peggy?
I think it was a good design before, and with the comments from the Planning Commission, the architect responded really well, and it's an improvement all the way around. I especially like the improvement in the roof. So there's no leaf catching roof well. The roof is much tighter. The mass is tighter and moved to the center. That's a big improvement. Yeah, the making the library clad differently than the rest reduces the mass on the southwest side. I think it's a really excellent design. And I like the 10-foot heights on the first floor because it sort of suits the grandeur of the house. I really like it. So I think it meets all the criteria. That's it.
Okay, great. Thanks. I concur. I think this is a big step forward. I really like the movement and the way that the massing has been pushed north. The two areas of heartburn, and one was the sort of wing wall in front of the motor court, but I guess I understand the purposes of that, and I'll defer to the design experts. The other is there's on the south wall, the south sort of perimeter wall, there's a part that juts up, and I don't really see the need for that, and I think it's going to sort of stick up to the south neighbor, and I think it would improve the design if we could just have a normal straight wall there. And I think if you look at the conceptual views that are coming from the southwest, the corner, that southwest corner is markedly improved, but you see this sort of little bit of wall sticking up for no real purpose. So if the applicant's amenable to that, I would like to see that go. On the green and the blue, on the shutter colors, I'll defer. That's not. I think that's a make or break either way for me.
Can I respond to the wall?
Yeah.
It jumped up just a little bit like that. There's a fountain on the other side, and it really suits the style of architecture very well, and adds a little bit of serendipity to an otherwise unrelenting fence line, I think. So I think it's.
Yeah, no, I get the point of it. It's just that because there's a fall that comes down to the next plot, it's gonna when you look up from the next lot to the south and you look up, it's gonna look a lot bigger than if we were dealing with flat parcels. It would just be sort of a change in elevation that adds interest. But I think in this one, it might get a little oppressive, and so that's my concern about it.
Okay.
I don't know if can I make a comment or can I respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I would have to agree with Commissioner Dallas that it is a little flourish for the wall. It does correspond with a nice water feature on the property side. I think it just becomes an element. It's not a very high element. I don't think it adds much height to the wall. And then in thinking about how once these lots are developed, there eventually will be landscape on that drop. So they'll have some trees, bushes, elements that will eventually really blur what that line will be. And it also occurs in the middle of the property. So eventually the house, whatever is built there one day, I don't think it'll be that big of an element for the, I guess, homeowners of that lot, which I guess would be lot 4. But if it is a heartburn for everyone, I mean, we'll be willing to do it. But I think it's a nice feature for the courtyard. It kind of gives it a little special flourish.
Okay. Well, I'm not hearing cries of support for my concerns, so I take silence as
Well, is it a drop to the next, or is it a sloped drop?
It is a slope drop.
Slope.
slope drop. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, there wouldn't be the next fence wouldn't be up against, I mean, not the fence, but retaining wall for that property would be at the toe of that slope on lot 4, right?
Right.
So there'd be some planting, conceivably 2 to 1 or something. So, okay, all right. Yeah, that doesn't bother me if, it would bother me if the wall was then like 2 feet in front of that, there was another retaining wall dropping 8 feet or something, to create that pad for lot 4. But if it's a sloped condition, I don't, I mean, I think that little 2-3 feet is not a big deal. I don't know how tall it is, but doesn't bother me, but.
Okay. It seems like we've talked this enough. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I didn't,
Aye.
I'm
Oh.
sorry. What was the
Yes.
motion?
Approve. The motion is to approve as presented.
Okay. Yes, I approve it.
Chair,
Okay.
if we could do a roll call vote, I think it would make it a lot easier for both people at home listening and to record the vote.
Okay. Vincent, you want to do a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Hutt,
Here. Yes.
Commissioners Catalano,
Yes.
Dallas,
Yes,
Desai,
Yes.
Hetzner,
Aye.
Spears,
Yes.
and Tom Dennison is recused from this motion.
Okay. With that, the motion carries unanimously, and we will move on to our next public hearing.
Thank you very much.
And you're welcome. Thank you for the changes. And on this one, I have to recuse myself as I am within 500 feet. Hopefully, Tom is ready to come back on and share us through. So I will mute and stop my video so none of you can see my reactions.
Thank you, John. I believe that staff has a presentation for us. You may be muted, Vince. We didn't hear you there.
Yes, Claire Lynn, Associate Planner, has a presentation for you this evening.
I'll get out of here. Unless I have it, I'll let it close.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is the modification to Administrative Hillside Development Permit 1702 for the property located at 751 Oak Crest Drive. So the subject property is located at the top of the Oak Crest Drive, here outlined in red. The lot is 1.2 acre irregular shaped lot located in the hillside management zone. Here is the site plan of the property. The primary building is built in 1975. It's a pyramid-shaped structure with 3 levels and situated at the south half of the lot. And there is a 1-story guest house, a garage, and also a motor court in the middle. the structure itself is approximately 43 by 43 feet square, and the detached guest house is approximately 737 square feet, with the one-car garage that measures 266 square feet. So the total area is approximately 4,500 square feet. And all the structures are on a nearly flat existing pad. So here are the photographs of the property, and this is showing at the top of the Oak Crest Drive where the gate is and the driveway leading to the single family residence. And here on the right are showing the south elevation of the pyramid house and the southwest elevation. Additional views from the northwest and the northeast, and also a picture of the one-car garage and the guest house, and also a patio and jacuzzi on the west of the guest house. So the applicant is requesting that the Planning Commission to allow the modification to the previously approved permit, which granted the exterior decking, standing seam metal roof, and alteration to the garage roof and the new trash enclosure. Pursuant to the municipal code, any remodel addition to the existing legal primary structure, which are consistent in character with the original structure and compatible in scale, proportion, and character with the neighboring properties, shall be subject to granting of an administrative hillside development permit. And here are the little backgrounds about the project. So the applicant first submitted the project back in September 2017, and it was an administrative hillside development permit, and staff approved the application in November 2017. And then in April 2018, the applicant submitted for a building plan check, and by September 2019, the plan were approved by building official. And then in April 13, 2020, the applicant was having trouble obtaining quotes that it's economical. So the applicant submitted revision and applications to modify the approved plans. Staff feel that the modification is beyond the authority of administrative review and is therefore requesting the commission's evaluation on the project. So the proposed modification is to change out the layout on 3 floors and alter the interior access stairs, and also a modification to the exterior elevation with a new roof configuration. The proposed project will still be in contemporary architectural style, and it will have stucco walls with recessed aluminum clad windows and horizontal wood sidings and wood decking. It will have a low pitched standing seam metal roof. The project will incorporate earth tone colors, and it will comply with energy efficient Title 24 and also comply with the low impact development plan. Project information, all the structure on the site is legally non-conforming, and the previous approved plan has an increase in square footage, and the proposed modification has no change except for the building height. The building height has been lowered to 32 feet. And here are the elevations. The one on the left showing the previously approved elevation, and the one on the right is the proposed modifications. And you can clearly see that previous approved design was transformed from the original pyramid that made of glass panels to a more habitable residence while maintaining the original structure and character of the pyramidal shape. And the proposed renovation is intended to bring this unique residence to be a more compatible in scale and proportion of the neighborhood. So they're proposing straighter walls and conventional roof. The proposed low pitch shed roof design is appropriate for this kind of contemporary style architecture. And the new roof design will be 5 feet lower than the original pyramid shape. And here is the southwest elevation. This is the elevation facing the view. And the shed roof right here is opening up towards the view and slope against towards the hillside. And this is the northwest elevation. And this is the northeast elevation. This is the elevation that you see when you pull in from the driveway. So the proposed design will significantly improve the energy efficiency as well as the aesthetic of the structure. However, the proposed design has deviated from the original character and the design of the original structure. Here is the floor plan. So the one on the left are the existing floor plan. One in the middle is previously approved plan, and the one on the right is proposed modification. And on the lower level, the modification is only to the staircase, the interior staircase, and a bathroom. On the first floor plan, the proposed modification is to swap out the storage room to a wine cellar and a laundry room, and also the modification of the staircase and eliminating the spiral staircase leading up to the upper floor. And instead, they're proposing a L-shaped staircase. And the proposed upper floor plans changed from this double height area and eliminating the spiral staircase into a more functional space and a square off wall and a staircase leading to the lower level. And because of the reduction in the area right here, there are no additional floor gain. So the square footage remained the same. Here are the colors and materials that is proposed for the project. They will be using stucco exterior finishes. They'll use fiber cement panels and engineering wood siding and wood decking, standing seam metal roof. And here are the renderings of the overall massing for the proposed modification. And the one on the top left is the southeast corner. And moving to viewing from the east and viewing from the north and the northeast corner. And this is viewing from the west where it's facing the view. So administrative hillside development permit finding has to be made. And here is the summaries that the proposed modification is consistent with the general plan for single family residential use. The existing structure are legal non-conforming and the proposed modification meets development standards in floor areas and also the lot coverage. Development minimized natural hazard and maximized accesses to open spaces. As the development is within the existing footprint, there are no added square footage, and the remaining site will be all unaltered and native hill vegetation is preserved. And also the proposed project eliminates environmental impact as the modification maintain the same use and no additional living space will be added. The proposed design is less non-conforming by lowering the height of the structure and complies with the design and development standard. Alternative before Planning Commission this evening is to approve the project and direct staff to prepare a resolution and conditions approving the project, or to approve the project but with modification or deny the application, identifying the findings that the commission feels cannot be made and the basis for rejecting those findings, or continue the project and provide staff and applicant with further direction. Staff is recommending that Planning Commission continue the application for modification to the administrative hillside development permit and provide directions to applicant and staff. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Is there a presentation by the designer, by the applicant?
The applicant and the owner are online.
Okay. Did they want to say anything before we move forward?
Fiona, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, yeah, I don't actually have anything prepared for the presentation.
That's great. That's fine.
Sorry.
No need to be. So I guess I will first, yes, Bob? You're gonna have to come off mute for us.
Can I ask a question?
Okay. I have a question for staff. We've received communication that somehow this house has some significant value. Has it ever received any awards, or is it received any kind of accommodations from the state or the city for its architecture or its placement, or any kind of anything that would make it special?
It has not.
Okay, thank you.
I have some more questions of staff. Are there any other commissioners that have questions of staff?
Yeah. Hi, it's Bill. Just one.
Yeah, we have not.
I'm sorry, Joe. I think Bill was asking a question.
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thanks. Just one. This, I don't see much of the original house there. This never needed a demo permit. of any kind, correct? Because the previous approval was done over the counter from what I could see. And although they were maintaining the pyramid, now it looks like it's completely gone. But we're not asked for any kind of demolition permit. They're somehow using the original structure enough that it doesn't qualify for a demo permit.
This house does
Demolition.
not have any historic significance. It's not 75 years of age or older, and it does not require a discretionary demolition permit. It will just require a normal demolition permit as other houses of this age.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to see where we were going to fit this in. I wanted to find. You've seen the letter from Miss Marie Claus, who's apparently a neighbor there, and there are some environmental issues, site issues that are referred to in this letter, and I'm just wondering that they're more of a public works. Perhaps public works nature, perhaps the city engineer is the appropriate person to review that. I wonder from staff, has anything been done with looking into what's said in this letter at all?
So I looking into the building permit record for the house and also the garage that was issued back in 1974. And at the site visit, we did observe unsafe situation where the debris came down from the hill and behind the garage. So this garage is a legal structure that has been vacant for some time without proper maintenance. So the city would ask the property owner to hire an engineer to prepare a technical engineering study to propose recommendations and remedies for the city structural engineer to review.
You haven't brought Kev up there to look at it.
Kev has been up there.
He has. Okay, it would be great because we could make all kinds of design recommendations that that Kev would not agree with, because there's some possibly serious civil issues involved in this. So I sure would like to. Do you have Kev a report from Kev?
We don't. We haven't received any report submitted by the property owner.
Okay, well I'm referring you all know Kev. What's his last name? He's got a very long last name. Who's your consulting civil engineer for staff for public works?
The Charkutian?
Yes, thank you. Would you say that again? Tarchukian?
Charkutian.
Okay. I'll get it.
Good job.
Sorry. I'm not trying to be funny about it. I could just never remember his last name. You know, if he was up there, I sure would like to have, on behalf of the city, not the owner, but on behalf of the city and as part of this review, I would certainly like to hear what he had to say.
Vincent, is it safe to say that before these plans would get approved, that there would be oversight from the appropriate people to ensure that the civil engineering concerns are handled before approval?
There will be. This will be reviewed by the structural engineer in more of a formal capacity.
Great.
Can I ask when the last time the property met fire code violations? Because it was fairly overgrown when I was there.
I would agree there needs to be some remediation, brush clearance, and weed abatement.
The other thing that I was aware of is that it has a deck there now that goes out into the canyon. Is that deck going to be rebuilt or modified, or is it going to go away?
That deck will be rebuilt, and it's actually part of a secondary application for a accessory dwelling unit.
So I have a request then.
when that deck was built, the fire code did not specify that a sprinkler system be installed underneath decks that go out over vegetation. And in order to meet fire flow, they're going to have enough water to get to that deck. And I would like some kind of, I would like to be reassured that the water line going to this property will sustain that much fire flow, because not only is there that one deck over the canyon, but they're putting another deck around the building. And unless you're going to make it out of steel or something, I believe that that also must be sprinklered. So we could discuss about this design all night tonight, but it may not be possible to be built because it cannot meet fire code.
Bob, and that is a similar argument to what I was saying about the fact that anything that we discussed tonight could be thrown completely sideways by what the consulting civil engineer says about the other site issues. So
Commissioner Spears, to be clear, are you saying that, are you talking about installing sprinklers within the proposed ADU, or are you proposing something else?
When a deck is placed over vegetation, on this property, that's one of the other problems, is it's not on these pictures. So the design is incomplete. But there is on this property a deck that goes out over the canyon. And it's a very steep slope underneath that deck, and there is vegetation underneath that deck. The code says now that if you're going to build a deck over vegetation, that the underneath side of that deck has to have a sprinkler. And that's in case there's a brush fire that comes up, it's not going to make the deck part of the fire, assumedly.
You're on the updraft side there, right?
You're on the updraft side. So if you're going to install this sprinkler system, you have to spec it out so that it has flow and pressure rates in order for the sprinkler heads to work the way they're designed to work. And because we're dealing with a house that's at the very top of a hill, we have concerns about the water pressure and the water flow that can get to that piece of property. And it would be easily for them to build a deck for which the sprinkler system can protect. And so what I want to know is, when they built the house originally, did they put a big enough water line in so that the sprinkler systems for these decks could then operate the way they're supposed to?
Well, that really relates to something else, and I'll mention it from my own experience, but I want to defer to the two firemen.
Hey, Joe, before we get too far, are these questions for staff? We'll go into deliberation in a minute, but this is our time to ask questions of staff before we go into deliberation.
But kind of in between, I'll defer.
All right. Any other questions for staff on this? I did have a question. It looked like, the way I read this, that they are today by right to go ahead and build the picture that we saw as the before picture, because they've already had those plans approved. Is that a fair assessment, Vincent?
That's correct, and they were already had plans approved and stamped by the building official.
So they don't even have to be before us to go build it with the pyramid on top. It's the changes that they're making to make it look more modern that they've come before us for.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Tom, I do have a question then, and that is then why are they not just asking for a demolition permit for the pyramid? Is that just because of the way the thing has gone down in steps administratively?
The intent of the original design was to retain as much of the pyramid as possible. The modification due to some of the project bids that they received made it infeasible for them to retain the shape and use standing seam metal roofing on the pyramid as was originally proposed. So currently they are seeking modifications to make the project more, or at least be more affordable.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes,
So since it's not looking like the pyramid anymore, it doesn't have any relation to its original structure except for maybe the foundation. It seems, and it has a second story, it seems like you're right, in a type of review has changed and needs to come before the planning commission. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Mhm.
Okay, and then also the height limit should stay at 25 at that point then.
At this point, the building is existing non-conforming in terms of its height and setbacks. So they have reduced the overall height, but it's still outside of the standard of 25-foot height for that zone.
So I guess I don't understand existing non-conforming. It's not really existing if we've taken it down to the first floor level.
It's de facto demolition.
So it effectively becomes new construction from the first floor up, which puts it into, it needs to conform to the height standards, the way I see it, but I might be wrong.
And you could interpret that in that manner. And certainly the commission could make that a condition and suggest redesign to make it comply with the 25-foot height requirement.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, to clarify that point, which is a good point, if they're choosing to alter the roof profile and build up that now from not keeping the pyramid shape. So that's a choice, not, which would necessitate compliance with the code at hand, right? Wouldn't it? I mean, how can you, because they're not, if they weren't changing a legal non-conforming aspect of it, then I could see that stays intact. But now they're voluntarily choosing to change that whole second story as far as the profile goes, which may be better for them because it's just as cost effective to do that than to retain the pyramid. But how do they retain the non-conforming aspect on something that they're voluntarily changing?
Good question.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement that for that degree of modification, it probably should be complying with the underlying code for height.
And
Now,
that's part of why it got referred back to us instead of staying as a ministerial review. Is that correct, Vince?
That's one of the reasons, including the transition away from the original design.
now, is the height limit different in this is in the hillside, right? Ordinance?
Side management zone.
Yeah, HMZ. So is it 25 feet to the tallest section, or is it like all the other zones where it's 25 feet to a third of the roof or whatever?
It's 25 feet overall.
Okay.
I'd like
Oh.
to say that that seems reasonable, and it was okay to allow it when it was just a little pyramid going up, which was part of the original design. But then to transfer it to a whole new design, which is much more boxy, really increases this third story mass of the building, if you count the basement from the ground up. And so it gets into sort of an area that is hard to justify relative to what everybody else wants to build in the hillsides. And so,
Are there more questions for staff, or should we bring this back for deliberation and start those conversations?
Well, I had one question, which in the original write-up, the narrative, it said the recommendation was to continue this. What was the reasoning for continuing it? And if so, what are we deliberating on? Is it just to get feedback on the design and then we're continuing it, or what's?
Basically, staff was not coming in with a recommendation to approve the project. We still had some concerns with the design and wanted to get the commission's input on this process.
Any other questions for staff before we start deliberations?
No.
All right. Public comment, do we need to insert into the record the email we received? Does that need to be read in, or how does that work?
No, there's no need to read it in. It's part of the record already.
Okay, then we'll bring it back in for commission's deliberation. Who would like to start? Joe, you want to lead us off?
Well, sure. You know, I really agree with what was just said a couple of minutes ago. You know, to let a skinny peak under an older ordinance go to a certain height does not mean. I mean, this is essentially a demolition. Come on, let's get over it. All right. And to, because there was that old peak there, to say that now I can take a big shed roof and also violate what's current. That's no, I don't buy that. I don't buy that in the least. I'll tell you the other thing I don't buy is if you know where it is. Any argument about it or a finding about how it's neighborhood compatible in its design. It's out in the middle of nowhere, right? There are a number of houses up there that are all very unique, but they're also remote from each other. That there really is no neighborhood compatibility issue. Besides, it's just an ugly building. All right, it's like no, I can't. It's just ugly, and the other thing that I was concerned about, I'd started to get into a minute ago, with um, on the fire flow issue, was where's the nearest hydrant? How long is the driveway? And can you even bring what kind of firefighting? It looks like hundreds of feet long. I'm not sure, but how long is that driveway? And are you able to bring equipment up to the house, or do you have to fight this from out in the street? Is there a standpipe there? What's the story with that?
There's no standpipe on the property. The nearest hydrant is down on the cul-de-sac. And if I were on the engine company, I'd leave the engine down at the bottom of the cul-de-sac and I would hand stretch the lines up to the top.
You bet.
My experience is in site planning is that there's a maximum grade that the large trucks can go up, and it's not all that much, and that may be another reason why they're going to have to provide something so that you can just bring water up, you know, from the street like that.
A lot has changed since 1977 when that first was built.
So I don't know what as planning commission, I don't know what we do about that, but it's, you know, but those are in the overall, being able to fight a fire up in a site like this is a very serious planning issue in the overall. What we can do about it, from where we are, I don't know. But I'm not, you know, some people may be happy to see the pyramid go. Some people may be upset that it's being removed. It is kind of a funny Sierra Madre landmark from a distance. You can't see it from the street there at all. But besides the violation of roof height, if we have to pass on the thing as a piece of architectural design, I just think it's really terrible. It needs a lot of work yet.
I'm willing to go.
Go ahead.
So I hate to beat a drum that I've been beating for a while, but we're looking at drawings from a designer and not from an architect. And because of that, we don't see site plans, and we don't see landscape plans, and we don't see site conditions. And when you walk around this site, there are some things that are concerning. The hillside has been degrading and falling down onto the property. The vegetation around it is overgrown. The site is a hazard. It hasn't been occupied for quite a while and has been left to disintegrate. And you know, I'm not sure that I have a lot of questions about, okay, how is that going to get addressed as when in this new version of the construction? I agree with Peggy wholeheartedly that you start off with existing non-conforming, and then I'm going to tear out all that stuff. It should comply with current code. And so, you know, I would like to see something that says that the hillside is going to be stabilized, and I'd like to see something about planting around that. And I'd like to have some assurances to know that as they have a development in progress, that they have the infrastructure to support, you know, the safety. So yeah, I think the building height should be in compliance with current code. I don't think they should get a pass on that. Most of the rest of the building is underground, so it doesn't give me heartburn about how they rearrange the interior, but how that building impacts the property is of concern, and I'm not sure I've got all the information I need in order to feel comfortable.
Thank you. Manish, you want to?
Sure. You know, I'm not going to beat the designer up on the project. I think there's enough extenuating question marks on what Bob, you just mentioned, the site itself, you know, sort of that hillside behind the garage or the ADU structure, the decks for that matter. I think the fire issue is huge. So there's a lot of sort of public works site sort of things that are hanging out there. You know, but if I was asked, well, just look at if those were given and they're not worked out yet, and we're just talking about like the rework or the redesign of the pyramid house, you know, I think the height thing could be an issue, could not be an issue. I don't know. And this falls into not enough information. Like, it may be wholly appropriate for that shed roof to bust through the 25 feet because, you know, it's opening out onto the canyon. It's low on the interior side of the lot. Like, there may be reasons for that. But there's no section through there. I mean, the working drawings for the approved plan are great. I mean, they've got beautiful sections, but like these renderings don't tell us kind of what's happening floor to floor to floor. So if there was a section cutting right through the site or the building for that matter, from the subterranean floor, ground floor, and then the second floor, we could kind of see the relationship of that shed roof relative to you know, the heights there, and we might be able to make a more informed decision on whether it would be appropriate for that to flip higher or if it needs to be within that. As it stands now, I think that, you know, the concept that they're choosing to alter that pyramid for valid reasons, but nevertheless, they're still choosing to alter it. So, and change the design to this shed element, which is fine. But I don't think they should be granted. At that point, you move out of existing non-conforming because you're choosing to change something. So it should have to meet at least the criteria for height that currently sits in the HMZ. So that's a problem for me. Design-wise, I don't have a whole lot of unction with the change. That structure is a notable structure in town. I mean, everyone knows about it. It's been in decay and disrepair for years. And so, that going away doesn't give me any heartburn, I could have told you it's not a protected landmark thing other than it's a curiosity up there, So I don't have any issues with the design, the redesign, but I have a lot of issues with the stuff around it, I guess. So we need more information, a section would be very helpful, and then I think we can have a more informed discourse around whether this is appropriate or not. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Peggy?
Okay, I have some issues. First of all, I want to say I love the property, the pyramid, the glass pyramid. It's just a wonderful, concept and a wonderful serendipity. And I applaud the people that bought it and are trying to, reuse as much of this structure as possible. I think that's very noble. And so to a certain degree, I'm very sympathetic with the owner and the designer. But that said, I think there are serious fire repression issues and water flow related to that, as Bob said. The height needs to conform if they're losing the pyramid shape, because there's no reason to go that high anymore. There's no reference to go back to at that point. And then related to that is the massing, because the height is related to massing and keeping the massing low. And related to that is the white stucco that seems to really increase the sense of mass. And they've used a lot of white stucco on the latest design that should, that could be knocked back so it doesn't scream so much. And then last of all, the site stability is sort of where you need to start with all this, I think. Because if the site isn't, civil engineer can't make the site stable, then, the whole thing becomes undoable. But otherwise, I like what they're trying to do, and it's the best form of recycling and is to reuse as much as what you can. And so I applaud them for that. And the plan elements and changes are good. I mean, as far as plans go, but yeah, the height doesn't work. The massing doesn't work. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Peggy. Bill?
Hello?
Hey there. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so, well, we have engineering issues. I sympathize with the people about the property because they have a approved design that they could sort of get around this, but they're already telling us by the design that it's seemingly unaffordable, which is too bad. So I'm not going to belabor the things. I think you're right. If they're going to change it, it obviously has to be made up to code. That may change their mind on the cost analysis, because some of these things could be, deal breakers. But so I think they are trying to improve the design so it is more livable, and I applaud them on it. I sympathize with their cost issues and cost overruns, because I'm sure in that location with that unique property, they're probably endless. And the only thing I can say is, I mean, they need to go back and either consider one or the other, find a way to make the design that they can modify work economically and meet all the other requirements. So, but like Bob said, there's engineering issues and some fire issues and water flow issues. So I hope they can do it. I'm but I don't think we can go forward without any of that kind of information. And as Bob said, a better site plan. I think we need to see what the overall design is going to look at. but I can understand, I think some of this was all cost driven, which is too bad. But other than that, I don't have much else to say. You guys covered most of the other topics. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that I'm thankful that the applicant is working towards repairing this site. It's been vacant for quite a while, and it's fairly well hidden. You gotta climb pretty high up Bailey Canyon to see it, but there are still portions of the city where you can see this from. So I think that one of the challenges here is that they have an approved set of plans that would likely look very different if they came before the commission today, I think. I agree with a lot of the other commissioners that if you remove the demolition, or if you remove the existing non-conforming portion of the top, that I can't find a way to not then have to comply with our current standards for height. Obviously, I share the concerns that Commissioner Spears has brought up with the site infrastructure. The design of the plans today I don't think we're at a point where we can even discuss those yet. I think that the major, if I'm hearing people correctly, I want to make sure that we're giving good, clear feedback to the applicant here. The two kind of themes that I heard were that the height requirement, if they remove the existing non-conforming portion of the height requirement, then they should abide by the current standards, which I believe is maximum code height of 25 feet, we said. And then I think the other items were site infrastructure safety, ensuring that there are good, sufficient water supply to the facility, not just once it's completed, but probably from the beginning as a prerequisite. There have been many fires started by welders. I may have spent a week in Santa Clarita on one. As the work happens there, that's going to be a time where we want to make sure that there is sufficient water supply up there. So that might be a good prerequisite for that. I think that we would want to see that there is a plan for the existing terrain that's there, and making sure that it's all handled. But it doesn't sound like there is a consensus from anybody that we should move forward with this today. So I guess I would entertain a motion to.
Well, I would add to that, Tom, better drawings too, in terms of site plan, sections through the structure, into the hillside, so we can kind of see the relationship of these structures to the hillside and to themselves. So
Absolutely. One of the things that I believe we've been provided before here at the commission is that study that shows the visibility of it against the hill behind it, where they take it from a couple of points and show the angles of projection so that we can see how far it intercedes into the plane of view of the hillside behind it.
And a
There's
landscape
also,
plan? Because I'm not sure that the existing landscape meets code, and once you begin to rearrange the vegetation around that, then it may become more visible or whatever. There's a giant eucalyptus tree right below that building that may or may not meet code.
and also the design of what we're presented with may be affected by the other hillside issue, and that is not just as you say, which is very important, the visibility from different vantage points, but there's also the technical question for Kev Chartukian that about the stabilization of that hillside at all. There could be serious issues which, if they were left alone, if you know you were letting sleeping dogs lie, they would just stay there. But if you want to go in and start doing something, then there are going to be potential issues that are raised, and they could be affecting the design and the overall. And so we could, if we just see our own visual section without the input from the city's consulting civil engineer, you know, we may be bolting off in the wrong direction with this.
Sure, that's fair. So with those various points in mind, I guess I would entertain a motion to, and I would entertain a motion.
Well, it'd be a motion to continue, right, Vincent?
That's your prerogative, yes.
To a date, is it uncertain, certain?
We can continue it to a date certain or uncertain, and we would defer that to the applicant.
Fiona, it looks like you are still on. Would you like this deferred to a date certain or a date uncertain?
She may need to hear from her consultants to answer that.
Hello, I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Certainly. Would you like this, it looks like there's going to be a motion to continue this. Would you like this continued to a date certain or a date uncertain?
Does that mean that you guys will, I'm sorry, can you tell me what that means?
Certainly. The plans as presented today are not going to meet the commission's standards for approval. And so we would like to continue the project. We can continue it to a date certain, which means that you will not have to repost notice. The existing notice will get modified to the date when you will present it next to us. Or if you think it's going to take more time to come before us, then you would present it to a date uncertain, which would mean that you would have to go through the notice process again. Did I say that right, Vincent?
Yes, you did.
That'd be something that I can get back to you guys on.
We have to make that determination now. So I believe, Vincent, we can go ahead and continue it to a date certain, and then if it changes later to a date uncertain.
Yeah, so we could always continue it. So if we actually, to give the applicant time, I would imagine we can come back as soon as June 18th or into July. We have 2 meetings in July, July 7th and July 16th.
Which of those dates would you like us to continue to, Fiona?
I'm so sorry, could you repeat the 2 dates again?
So there's 2 options. If we kick back in 2 weeks, I'm not sure if you're going to have enough time to prepare all the drawings that the commission is requesting. That would be June 18th. I'm looking more at reasonable time frame of either July 2nd or July 16th.
But you were saying that if, for instance, we say that we set the date for the next one, if we cannot make it, we can always modify that date?
We can always continue it.
Okay. Can we put it for the next date first, and then I will try to have all things gathered by then, hopefully.
So you are requesting June 18th.
That's the next earliest one, right?
Yes.
That's the next meeting is on June 4th. You will not be able to make that meeting.
Okay, then I guess I would go for the next earliest one, which is
June 18th.
Okay, yeah.
All right. I will entertain a motion.
Also move.
Second.
All right, a motion has been presented and seconded to continue this to a date certain, June 18th.
Mhm.
That's correct.
All those in favor, let's do a roll call vote. Actually, Vincent?
Okay. Chair, Vice Chair Dennison,
So moved. Yay.
Commissioner Spears,
Yes.
Catalano,
Yay.
Desai,
Yes.
and John Hutt is recused. And also Dallas as well,
Yes.
And Commissioner Pevsner.
and Pester, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
All right. And Vincent, are you clear with the commission's hopes to see out of the next version so that if the designer communicates with you, you'll be able to convey our wishes back?
Yes, we will.
All right. With that, if Chair Hutt is still here, I will turn it back over to him.
Okay. Is the video working? Maybe.
Are you in a black room?
No. Turn on the
Okay.
lights.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Let me try the video again. How's that? Is that better? No.
No.
Why don't you just finish this out, Tom, and I'll go by voice only for the rest of it.
Take us home, Tom.
Let me quickly pull up the.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, he turned the lights on.
Ah, he's back. All right, I guess next is Planning Commission reports. Are there any reports from any of the commissioners?
I have nothing.
Nope.
I have a report. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, go.
For the last 2 weeks, I've been doing a webinar on ADUs by somebody up in Portland who wrote one of the books about ADUs, Cole Peterson. He's been interviewing lots of people in the ADU market, people that provide financing, contractors, developers, legislators, and getting all sorts of different viewpoints on what the emerging market is like. So that's been kind of interesting.
Is it good news for Sierra Madre or bad news for Sierra Madre?
Actually, the more I listened to it, the more I got to thinking about Sierra Madre. Sierra Madre is already infiltrated with ADUs in many, many people's backyards. So it's just a matter of embracing the lifestyle we have and making sure the design quality stays high. And I think to a certain degree, we have to create a culture within the community about that. And one of the things that was mentioned was writing personal articles about people and the structures they have in their backyard or attached to their house and who lives there and which is quite often family or friends because they were built to help people out that they knew. And so it's just a matter of developing some understanding maybe. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other reports from any commissioners? All right, the planning and community. Oh, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Pevsner.
Yeah, I just have a question. I've had a few people around town inquire about getting notices about arbors they built in front of their house in the codes, and some of them had taken them down. There's been, I've had a few angry discussions with people, not directed towards me, but just the whole concept, not even knowing that there was any codes related to them. And it made me a little curious because some of the things they told me about fines and permit fees and things like that kind of, raised my eyebrows a little bit. I thought maybe we could have a
discussion about that issue, just because I never thought about it until someone brought it up, and then two or three more other people brought it up. I don't know if that's something we can talk about, and then maybe make some recommendations to the council to maybe change some of those requirements. Because I sort of like to know the history, because people that mention it to me would they get set and kind of blindsided. It's one of those kind of things where you go, there's no excuse for the law, not knowing the law, but sometimes you think, well, why would I have to check? So when they found out the hard way, they weren't very, very happy. And so anyway, I don't know if that's something we can bring up, but I'd like to sort of try to put it on some kind of a discussion item at some point.
I assume that we'll have to agendize that for a future meeting since we didn't notice the conversation. Yeah. I'm seeing concurrence from council, so if that's something we can add to the list, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other reports from commission? Hearing none, we'll turn it over to the Planning and Community Preservation Staff Report.
We have for our next agenda 2 items that are going to be coming before the commission. Both are public hearings. And the first one is the requirement to move from a level of service in terms of CEQA evaluation for traffic impacts to vehicle miles traveled. So this model, which is I'm in contract with the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments. A number of cities contracted with them, and we hired and went out to bid and selected Aaron Piers, which is a transportation consultant. So we are in the process of preparing the reports and information that we're going to be bringing to the Planning Commission. We are basically complying with a state mandate to utilize vehicle miles traveled for this effort when we are evaluating projects and applying CEQA review. Second item that will be included in our discussion and as a public hearing next week, we're going to have kind of a 2-part. One of them is a density bonus law update that our city attorney will be giving that presentation. And also in unison with that is the density bonus ordinance amendments will also be considered at that time as well. Again, this is in response to state law, and it's also in response to the update of the housing element as a requirement. If Alex, did you have anything further to add to that? And Alex, if you have anything,
yeah,
further,
I muted it. Yeah, sorry about that. I just want to note that I'll talk about it more at our next meeting, but our density bonus ordinance, which is currently chapter 17.34 of title 17, the zoning code, hasn't been updated since 2004. Since then, the density bonus law has been updated something like 8 times.
Wow.
So it's really out of date, and we need to do something about it. That's all.
It's very out of date, but even since I've been here, we have not had any housing projects constructed, other than the Mariposa condos that was approved prior to my arrival, but was constructed while I was here.
Great. Anything else for the good of the cause? Hearing none, I will adjourn us to the next regular meeting on May
21.
May 21. Thank you. Night, everybody.
Good night.
Like,
Thank you.
Bye.
See y'all.